Hello everybody and welcome back to this video where we'll be running over some of the top oil and gas companies, and we're going to dive in a bit further to their renewable ambitions. We're going to have a look at how much renewable capacity that they're going to have, what is the carbon intensity reduction that they're aiming for, and how much money are they going to spend. So this is kind of like to continue on one of our first videos which benchmarked the top 5 supermajors and see more in depth from a renewable perspective, how are they stacking up against each other and how are they stacking up against one of the companies that has managed to do a transition from oil and gas to renewables. So most of the data in this video comes from Global Data Energy, however we have complemented it with our own research for the areas where we felt that the Global Data Energy was lacking a bit. So here on the first one, we are going to look at the renewable capacity ambition for 2025 and 2030 measured in gigawatt. And as we take a look at the first company, Exxon Mobil here, which is the biggest oil and gas company, IOC, they do not have any renewable capacity ambition as of today. They have announced 0 on this. If you have seen one of our previous videos on fuel cell, you are aware that Exxon Mobil is doing a research project with fuel cell regarding green hydrogen. However, from a much more company-wide perspective, they have not announced any ambitious plans for renewable capacity going forward. The next one on the list is probably the one that has the most ambitious plans as of today, and that is BP, British Petroleum. They have an ambition of having 20 gigawatt in 2025, and they want to take that all the way up to 50 in 2030. So as you can see across the board here, by far the ones with the highest gigawatt installed capacity in 2030. However, we still need to see them being able to deliver on that. This is just a target, but they are very ambitious about doing this transition to renewables. BP was actually one of the companies in the early 2000s who already tried that, but it was a big failure, and the company kind of like went back to focus solely on its oil and gas operations. The next one is another US company, Chevron, which, similar to Exxon Mobil, has not announced any of their plans in relation to renewables. Next one, we have the French company Total, which is probably the one that has delivered most on the plans as of today. In 2025, as we can see, they want to have 25 gigawatt and they want to take it up to 35 in 2030. So similar to BP, quite aggressive growth plans, but if we compare the two companies, we believe that Total has delivered more projects as of today than what we have seen from BP. We then come to the last supermajor, which is Shell. And this is based on our own research because Global Data Energy did not provide any numbers for them in terms of renewable capacity ambition. So take this with a grain of salt. But what we could see was that in 2030, they at least wanted to have 20 gigawatt of wind power. And they also wanted to add on solar power of at least 2 gigawatt. However, knowing Shell and their ambitious plans, we believe actually that they will be more aggressive than this target here, and it should actually be higher, but how far we are not 100% sure. We then have Italian Eni or Eni, which also has very ambitious plans. They want to go from 5 gigawatt in 2025 all the way up to 15 in 2030. Next comes the only state-owned company on the list, which is Equinor. Again, this is one of the companies that I have the best feelings about in terms of transitioning into renewable capacity because they are being supported by the Norwegian government, which obviously has a huge focus on this. And again, compared to the size of Equinor, it's quite a big transition. They want to go similar to Eni from 5 to 15 over the next 10 years, so quite ambitious plans. And Equinor is one of the companies who have also announced a lot of projects recently. They're collaborating with BP on some wind power projects, so it's a quite interesting stock, and it's one of the ones that I have the best feeling will be able to do the transitioning in the future. Finally, we have Spanish Repsol, which compared to the CapEx, we will see that a little bit later, also have very ambitious plans, although they do not have the highest numbers, but they want to go from 5.2 in 2025 all the way up to 12.7 in 2030. So again, quite aggressive plans, if you will see, compared to the CapEx that they are expecting to spend over the coming years. Finally, thought it would be interesting to include Dong Energy, which is now known as Orsted from Denmark. Orsted is probably the prime example of a company that has managed to transition from fossil fuels to renewables, and they have done this very successfully. We thought it would be interesting to compare them to some of the companies that we see below. And as we can see that they have an ambition of, in 2030, having 30 gigawatts of renewables. Today, Orsted has a market cap on $67 billion, while as a company as BP has only 74. So it's quite interesting to see that a company like Orsted in terms of market cap is not that far behind from one of the supermajors. And it's going to be interesting to see if the other oil and gas companies can manage to do a similar transition, probably maintaining part of the oil and gas business, of course, because it is very lucrative, and see how this will affect the shareholder value. Next part focuses on the reduction in carbon intensity of the products that these companies are selling. And again, by no surprise, Exxon and Chevron has not announced any targets for this in 2040 and 2050, which is the main years that most of the companies are using. The remaining ones are relatively similar in their targets. BP only has 50%, which is a bit surprising given how aggressive plans they have in terms of renewable capacity. Total is on 60%, Shell on 65%, Eni on 55%, and Equinor on 50%. Repsol here has put a target out for 2040 as the only one of the companies that we are looking at here, and they expect to reduce it by 40%. So this could actually be increased a bit further if we wanted to look 10 years further ahead, and it will probably be somewhere in the range of the other companies. Finally, we thought it would be interesting to see how much money that they are going to invest to reach those targets that we just saw before. And here we are looking at how many billions per year that the company are investing. We are looking at 3 different years depending on the targets set out by the companies. We have 2023, 2025, and 2030. We're just going to skip the American companies again and move directly to BP, which by no surprise is the one that has the most ambitious spending plans. They expect to spend $3.5 billion in 2025 and take that all the way up to $5 billion per year in 2030. Total, relatively okay numbers, but not as aggressive as we may thought when we saw initially. $2 billion in 2025 and take that up to $3 billion per year in 2030. As you can see here, Shell has an ambitious plan of $3 billion per year in 2025, so roughly the same 5 years before Total. Eni, $2.5 billion in 2023, so quite good number there as well. Equinor, again, very ambitious, $3 billion in 2023, so if you benchmark them across the board with Shell and Total, even more aggressive, at least when we look at as of today. And Repsol has $1.7 billion in 2025. But to get a really good flavor of how much these companies are willing to transition into renewables, it is important to look at how much money out of the total capex spend that they're going to spend on renewables and how much is going to be put into their existing businesses. So if we take a look at BP, in 2030 they expect that 33% will be spent on low carbon investment, which means that 66.66% will still remain with the incumbent businesses. Total, even less in 2030, only 20% of their total capex will go towards renewables. Shell, 2025, only 10%, so obviously can grow towards 2030, but it's not that high compared to, for example, BP. Eni in 2023 already is going to spend 26% of the annual budget. So again, it's difficult to just look at the billion number. You really need to look at how much it is out of the total capex to get the full understanding of how much the company is actually transitioning from its existing business into becoming a more renewable powerhouse. Equinor in 2023, 25%, so also quite ambitious. And then, as we mentioned, Repsol in 2025, already 39% of their capex is going to be spent on renewables. So again, we could foresee in 2030 this number will be a lot higher. And Repsol therefore seems to be doing a more similar path as we saw with Orsted previously, where they have fully transitioned into a renewables company. So finally, we just wanted to show the overview from Global Data Energy, where we obviously complemented a bit with our own numbers. And the takeaways for us is obviously that the European companies are currently more ambitious than the US counterparts. This is clear. Exxon Mobil, Chevron, and also other US companies like ConocoPhillips do not have any targets as of today, while as the Europeans are much more advanced in terms of where they want to be in the future. At least that's what they are announcing to the market. However, we also want to stress that Exxon and Chevron are not stupid. They have been around for many decades. They know the business, they know that a transitioning is going on, but they are also fully aware that this will not happen overnight. This will happen over several decades, and that's also why we personally don't believe that they will experience the Kodak moment, which a lot of people today would like to refer to for these companies, because they're not doing any announcement on where they want to be in the future. We are pretty sure that they are observing the market closely, and they will make the move when they feel the time is right. It could be that it would be good for them to start a little bit earlier. We would personally prefer that, because we think it's good that the companies have something to aspire towards and to perhaps change the culture and the mindset of the people working in the companies. However, to say that they are dead already today because they haven't started the transition, and we feel that's a bit silly, and we feel that they will come out at a certain point, and they will come out strong within this area. Finally, we just wanted to add the current status as for when we did the analysis of the Supermajors and what our thoughts were on the 4 companies. So you have Exxon, Chevron, Shell, BP, and Total, and you can see how the percentage change has been since we did the analysis. We clearly stated in the video that we felt that we were comfortable investing in more or less any of these companies. However, we liked some of them more than others, and what we can see is that we, as of today, have had a pretty good return on the investments, no matter which company you invested in. We think it was quite interesting that both Exxon and BP are the one that has performed the worst out of the 3 companies, and that was also what we said in the analysis, that we felt more comfortable with Chevron, Shell, and Total in terms of the current state of their results and the balance sheet. So this is only a snapshot during the time, and this will obviously change in the future. However, we still think that if we are to look at all these companies, the ones that we like the most is still Shell, it is still Total, and it is still Chevron. BP, although they have aggressive plans within the renewables, we are still really not 100% sure whether they will be able to live up to these numbers. If they are so, there may be a good upside on the share price of them. However, we are not fully convinced yet. Chevron, yes, they haven't announced anything in the renewable space, but we believe that is just a matter of time before that will come. And they are very, very strong, solid company. They have a strong balance sheet. They have done acquisitions during the downturn. So we think they will come out strong on the other side. And if they are to announce transitioning to renewables, we also think that that will have a positive effect on their share price. So we will still stick with them. Exxon, we're a bit concerned about their performance results within the oil and gas business, as we also said in the video. And again, they haven't announced anything in terms of renewable space. So it's not that we don't like Exxon, we just prefer a company like Chevron above them still. And again, Shell is just an overall strong and good company that is delivering both on the oil and gas side, but also in terms of their targets on the renewable space. This was all we had for today. We really hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for future content. Please give us a like, it really helps with the algorithm. Please provide any comments you may have to the video and any inputs you have to the content that we have just shown. It's always good to get other inputs or views. Please note that we are not professional financial advisors, and this is only done for entertainment purposes. There's not much more to say than stay safe and hasta la vista, baby. See you next time.